To keep me.
Okay, good
Good morning.
morning,
Over to you,
everybody.
Sandra.
Thank you, Forbes. Morning, everybody. So today's kind of edition in the Workplace Excellence series is it's all about the 5 strategies to improve team productivity by 15%. It drives me mad how often we are involved in conversations about, sadly, making structural changes, finding cost savings. How do we try and, lower our overheads without first thinking about the productivity of the teams we have? I think there is so much time spent on marketing initiatives. What's the return on investment of those marketing initiatives? What's the return on investment of this? What's the return on investment of that? Without thinking about, in enough detail at least, what's the return on investment of the team that we have in place? So today's session is to look at what things can we do to try and explore that and do something with it, because I believe the opportunities are way beyond 15%. And so, this is conservative. So, okay. And as we say, if you want to jump in with any examples or questions as we go, then please do. The more interactive, the better. So McKinsey have done loads of research on productivity and what drives productivity. And this piece of work, which was published in September 11th, 2023, so post-COVID, they looked at different archetypes of people and how their levels of engagement with the company had such a significant impact on the productivity, the discretionary effort that they bring to their work every single day. One of the key outputs of that report, and I can send round the link to the report for those that are nerds like me, provided this just, I think, heart-stopping sentiment, which is that more than half of employees rate themselves as largely unproductive. More than half! Oh my goodness. If half of our teams are rating themselves as largely unproductive, clearly that estimate of 15% only scratches the surface. It's stunning, because I fundamentally believe that people want to come to work and do a good job. For us as employers, it's all about how we use the right levers to try and unlock that potential. And it doesn't just happen. It's not just an accidental thing. We have to be very conscious about how we try to unlock that potential in people, so that when they come in on a Monday morning, what's the first thing they go to do? Is that the most impactful thing? Or is that the thing they just most like doing? If people make a choice, and we need to help people make the right choice, what to do and how to do it. If you were a fly on the wall of your business, what would you see? So it's fascinating for us as HR consultants, because we go into so many different businesses, and we'll give accountants as an example. We have a number of different accountancy firms that we work with, and as soon as you walk in the door for an accountancy firm, I feel you get a real sense of the culture, the levels of trust, the relationships, the level of focus, and the operational efficiency. I literally can feel it as you walk into the room. And I think that's fascinating, because they're all essentially trying to achieve the same thing with a very similar client base. And yet what and how they're doing it, completely different. We're often in a situation where we might be swapping out the leader of a business, or let's take a sales team as an example. We might be taking out someone that's a head of sales and replacing them with somebody else. I find it amazing that you bring in somebody new with a fresh pair of eyes and a different approach. The results can be just transformational, good or bad, but they can be transformational. And therefore, a lot of the challenge, I think, for employers is, how do we create that fresh pair of eyes? Because we're so used to doing what we've always done. We've kind of built it that way, and we've got used to it. And I think that can be a real challenge that hopefully we are on this call to be brave enough to take on. So, going to be talking about productivity. Now, there is give you loads of theories and loads of kind of different theoretical concepts about the fundamentals of productivity. largely there's about kind of how we design a job. What do we say is within someone's job responsibilities? What do we say about the skills they need to deliver on a job? What direction are they given in terms of where's the company going and their role within it? What kind of workplace are we creating now? That has significantly shifted post-COVID, hasn't it? But what workplace are they delivering that task? And is that conducive to being productive or not? What about their well-being? Are they feeling well, or are they feeling overly stressed or not challenged enough? Both have significant impacts on productivity and their sense of belonging. If someone feels that they belong, if they feel that they can contribute, that they feel part of a team and part of that vested interest in something, they will give more discretionary effort than if they feel like they're just turning up, watching the clock until 5 o'clock. So those are like the basic things. We know those things, don't we? We know those things to be true. There's lots of things we could do around all of those. But what I'm going to cover today are 5 strategies, 5 very specific strategies that will transform the discretionary effort that people are willing to give you every day. So we have strategy 1, sprints make you go faster. We have strategy 2, make meetings matter. We have strategy 3, which is all about enabling focus, removing obstacles. Strategy 4, incentivize marginal gains. This one's close to Forbes' heart. This is part of another conversation we had recently. I love David Brailsford and marginal gains. We'll talk a bit about that. And then strategy 5 about creating fire breaks. So, as this is a productivity webinar, we'll get started. Sprints make you go faster. So we are all as a business owner, we're usually the one with the starting gun. We're the ones that say, go. And there is great power in being able to create energy from giving starts and stops. So where we've come from, and I've worked in HR for, oh my God, 30 years. What usually, and in kind of time gone by, people would say, okay, let's set the business plan for the year, let's set individual targets and objectives, and then we'll monitor those through the year and we'll end with an appraisal. The world has changed so significantly, hasn't it? If we try and create a goal now for where we want to be in 12 months' time, the goal might be right, but actually how we're going to deliver it might change considerably. We might need to adapt and pivot and change constantly. And therefore, setting out that kind of longer term piece creates lethargy, and it creates ambivalence, really, because people think, well, that doesn't work anymore because actually AI's replaced that bit, or actually someone else has changed in the team, or actually I'll just do it tomorrow. Because the timescales are too spread out and people are running multiple objectives at the same time. So if I were to come into your business and say, oh, what are you working on this week? They might say a bit of this, a bit of that. I've got to run this process. I've got that meeting. I've got this meeting. I'm going to run that other report. I've got to respond to a quote, but it's all bits and bobs. And people get comfortable with that, of course, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it can be to the detriment of making leaps in progress. So we have to try to shift out of cruise control. How do we shift out of the monotony to create energy? Because otherwise we're just coming in doing what they've always done. And I believe generally that people are probably only working at maximum 65%. I think there is such an opportunity to change things up that will make their jobs more interesting and give your business far better results. This is about shifting out of that cruise control position to be able to create energy and starts and stops. So you may well have heard of Scrum methodology. Scrum methodology, taken from the sporting sector, as you can imagine, is all about how you create absolute focus so that people can sprint towards a goal. So rather than having numerous people working on over a period of time, numerous projects, and therefore spinning lots of plates at the same time, without really clear deliverable end dates, what we do is move to sprints, and sprints are a fundamental part of the Scrum methodology. Again, I can send around the links if you're interested more in Scrum methodology, but the basic principle is that we create sprints. And a sprint is whereby we say, right, month one, let's say, where are we now? End of March, April. In April, we're going to have a sprint towards this goal. So if I take my business as an example, we're going to say, revise our client proposal documentation. Okay, we're going to go on the 2nd of April. We're going to do 15-minute catch up every morning, and we're going to get to this outcome by the end. So by the 15th of April, we're going to have done X, Y, Z. So that, and then we visualize that. So we would post a note on the wall. This is what good looks like. These are the steps we need. This is the information we need. And we're going to go deep on getting this done on the Thursday. The Thursday, we're going to get that done. So everyone comes to the table, very active mindset. Let's make sure that, so somebody bring the draft, we're going to collaborate, review the documentation, make edits, pass it back for that to be finalized so that it is done. That feels fundamentally different, I believe, to just every kind of working on multiple projects, multiple goals at the same time. Because what we're doing is we're creating in each month these sprint times, and we're making it visual. The more we can visualize it for the benefit of the team, the better. Otherwise, everything stays kind of hidden. It's like everything being below water, because everything's on an email, or it's on a Slack message, or it's in a SharePoint folder somewhere. The more that we can visualize it to the team, whether that's on a CRM board, whether it's literally on the wall, on a whiteboard. Robin, you've got a lovely clean whiteboard behind you. You can fill that with Post-it notes and scribbles. How do we create that kind of visibility to the team? What the sprint is, when does it start, and when does it stop? Because that is how you create the focus. You've got the starting gun, so you can say go. The task for you is about articulating what the task is and what good looks like at the end. So when we say the stop, what does that look like? What will have been achieved? And then rallying the team members to prepare and block their time. So what is it that is needed to be done, and how do they block their time effectively? What do they need to bring to the table? So that everyone's coming to that sprint ready, actively kind of conscious of what they're going to be helping deliver. Sorry, I can't make that work. So you're rallying the team members, preparing and blocking the time out, and then you're having an absolute focus on what that delivery looks like. So as you can see, month one, you might have 2 weeks, say, just getting that task done. Month two, you might have 2 smaller projects involving different people, but with very focused outcomes. What is that sprint going to deliver? And then at the end of every sprint, you say, okay, what worked really well? What didn't work well? How do we make sure we deliver on that? What can we learn from it? Month 3 might be a different sprint. It creates a very different sense of energy, because people are coming to work thinking, oh, today we're getting this done, rather than just being another Tuesday. So it may be that you might identify 5 things, say, in your business. There might be 5 things. It's these 5 things that make a difference. How do we create a sprint around those things? Who needs to be involved? What do we need to have available? And the sprint might just be getting the research done. If it's quite a big beast, how do you break it down? It's like, how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time? How do you say, right, that sprint is all right, get the research done, so we have everything we need. So the next sprint is about collaborating on it, writing a draft. The next sprint might be finalizing the documentation, pulling it all together. Whether it's about a quote for a customer, whether it's about onboarding a new client, whether it's about designing a new product, how do you break it into manageable pieces, start and stop to create energy, and then allowing people to kind of go back to their kind of day job around that, because it creates a sense of momentum, which is also can be very satisfying, because people are feeling like they're getting something done. So the first strategy is all about utilizing the sprint methodology to break down the things that matter in your business. What are the key things that are going to make a difference? And how do you organize that in a way that drives momentum? So This tends to be what happens in the tech sector. They work with this is how software engineers and developers kind of work together to be able to collaborate, to be able to make really significant progress in short periods of time, because it creates that sense of focus and energy. So,
Sandra,
yes.
so really, really interesting on this theory, in so much as that interesting context, in so much as that we've been working with a business consultant with the Chamber in terms of setting up 1 year, 3 year plans. And to me, I've worked more on the sprint basis than that longevity process. So it's interesting to get this kind of structure, these two contrasting processes. I do think the 1 year does help, in so much as that if you wanted to get to the 1 year, you need to know in month 2 or 3 what are the steps to get to the end of the year. But
Yep.
this can obviously, the thing which just occurs to me with this though is with the sprint element is obviously everybody has to be resourced to be able to do it, or else an outcome could be burnout, is permanently always been spinning and spinning, but
Yep.
don't have the resources to be able to deal with the sprint.
Yes, indeed.
That is that an obvious thing to say?
No, it's really true. But what I find, so I'll give you a very recent example. When we take on a new client, we always review their terms and conditions. Usually, the revised terms and conditions, ensuring that they're legally compliant, that they're fit for purpose, blah blah blah, blah, usually takes 4 to 6 weeks. Yeah, tops. Usually they're in place. We've transferred people over to the new terms. 4 to 6 weeks tops. Got one client that came on board, and it was like 7, 8 months down the line, and we still couldn't get it over the line. Now, there was no information that was available. There was no particular change in resource. There was nothing that was different at month 8 than there was in month 1. It was all about creating the time and the focus. Now, I'd said to the chief exec recently, literally, if we could just sit in a room for 4 hours, we could have done all of that in that time. But because it's gone on and on and on, every time they've come back to the table to look at it, they've had to re-engage their brain. And we're going to talk a bit more about the brain energy a bit later. But they're having to come back and think, where did we get to? Where did we get to with this? What were we going to go away and find out? You're just burning through brain energy. You're just kind of like wasting it all by having to put things off and come back to it. The art of this is about, for you as a business owner or leader of a team, is to be able to go, right, let's make sure we've got the resources. Let's make sure we've carved out the time. It's about being the conductor. Get rid of everything else so that people can focus on this. But that means that you can get something done in sometimes 4 hours that would have taken 4 months, or you get it done, within a couple of weeks, rather than it spread out over a number of months. Because if you can say, get everything else for now, let's get this done. And it might be just like half a day. It might just be 2 hours of a day where we're just getting that piece of work done, rather than having multiple things that and therefore people feel like they're spinning all of those plates, trying to remember all of those things over a period of time, rather than just focus, get this thing done, tick it off. We all know how much we love to tick things off. Ticking things off is brilliant, isn't it? So this is helping people feel that sense of progression. Now, do we need to have an annual plan? Yeah, of course. Like every business needs to say, this is where we're trying to get to. This is how life will look differently in 12 months' time than where we are now. But where you create productivity is by being able to explicitly break it down into tasks and then create the space for the task to be done. So it's just like, I recently have been changing our client documentation. It's like, right, I'm not going to give this to one of the team and say, right, can you work on this? Because it'll take weeks. So, right, do a draft. Let's sit in a room. We're going to look at the draft, collaborate, make edits, change that, make those changes this afternoon so that it is done. And it's purely a sense of a different approach.
That's brilliant. And I think we actually worked out, Ilona, Robin, and myself, we worked out a big event like an expo in half a day, because we literally crunched it. rather than keep going backwards in bits. Anyway, I'll shut up. The next strategy.
Indeed. So we'll come and talk a little bit about sprinting in a minute, but that's the first strategy, the different approach to create focus. So strategy 2, make meetings matter. How many meetings do you have in your business? And it would be really useful for you to be able to go away and think, how many meetings do you have in a week? And how often do they look like this? There are so many. When we're looking at businesses that are saying we're going to need to go into restructure because we need to find savings, the business should always have looked at this first, and probably a few months before. Where have you got groups of people coming together that on a regular basis, often there's a weekly meeting, there's a monthly meeting, there's a weekly sales meeting, there's a client review meeting, there's an update meeting. How much does that cost? So if you worked out how many people are in that picture, 5 people, the hourly cost of each of those 5 people and the hourly cost of that space that you are probably renting or whatever, what's the cost of that meeting? Because it's quite scary, but it means you're holding the mirror up to yourself and thinking, right, when you think of the cost of that meeting, what's the outcome of it then? Because if people are coming and they don't know why they're there, or the outcome isn't clear, or it's not very well chaired, it's such a waste of money. It's literally like trying to hold sand in your fingers. It's just falling away. So there has to be an opportunity to look at making meetings matter. That's a mouthful for a Tuesday morning. The analogy I use with meetings is about is if you're driving a bus. If you're the chair of the meeting, you're the bus driver. And you are going to decide who's going to get on the bus with you to come on the journey, and you're going to decide where you're going to try and get to. With me, that's always using my sat nav because I have no sense of direction. But I, as a bus driver, will be deciding who's coming on the bus, why are they coming on the bus, which route are we going to take, and what's the destination. I, as the bus driver, need to decide that because I'm the one that's driving. So before there is a meeting, and particularly where you have regular meetings in your business, you need to think about, what does the meeting cost you? So when you think about who's usually attending that meeting, and it's for, say, 2 hours, and it has 5 people in it, how much does that cost you? And think about the last time you had that meeting, was it worth it? So what does the meeting cost? What's the purpose of the meeting? So how will you know if the meeting has been successful or not? And is a meeting the best method of communicating? Very often, businesses lean on meetings to communicate things. And sometimes that's just not the best way to do it. If it's purely about cascading information, then sometimes maybe an update, a video, a different delivery channel will be far more effective at just cascading the information. Ideally, meetings are where it should be more about collaboration, problem solving, decision making. So as you're driving the bus, you're deciding, where am I going to try and get to? And is this the best way of getting there? And not being afraid to say, actually, let's try and do things differently. Who needs to be there? So who needs to be in the room and make sense of that? So often when we do employee engagement surveys, which we do many, many of every year, there's always stuff in the verbatim comments where people say, well, I go to a meeting, I'm not really sure I need to be there. It's just such a waste of time. Happens all the time. Saying, oh my God, that is costing a fortune when you think that every week, every month, every year. And it's disengaging because it's boring. If people don't know why they're even there, what they're supposed to be contributing, then it can have a really negative impact on how they feel about their day. So we need to be looking at who needs to be there, kind of getting the structure right. So who's the right people in the room, the right purpose, and everyone clear on the purpose. Utilizing their resources in the right way, making sure that we have the right people, the right preparation. There are different behavioral styles. There are some people that can come to a meeting and think straight away in the moment and be able to contribute. Not necessarily the best thoughts, but they will speak in the moment. Other behavioral styles are far more reflective, and they will not be able to contribute to the meeting unless they have had time to think about it in advance. So the more that you can advise people in advance on the agenda, but also what they might be able to contribute or what decision you're looking to make, what problem are you trying to solve, the more that those more reflective styles, which will be about 65-70% of your team, the more you're able to help them be able to do that thinking in advance, the more value you're going to get at the meeting. Just people rocking up and you saying, what do you think about this, is wasting such a good opportunity to be able to truly get their thoughts. They'll have the thought, but about 20 minutes after the meeting's finished, and it's lost. So being able to prepare well for meetings, sending the agenda, sending any pre-read, this is what we want to get to. By the end of Tuesday's meeting, we want to have made this decision. Can you think about options, think about pros and cons, bring those to the meeting, get them to post-it note it, get them to be able to give their views in a way that works for them, means you're going to get a lot more value out of that meeting. So that's before the meeting. Shouldn't take long, but very necessary. Then we have during the meeting. Okay, so ideally, you're stating the purpose. As you're the bus driver, this is where we're intending to get to. We're going to Milton Keynes. Is everybody on the bus coming to Milton Keynes? Otherwise, get off. Get off the bus, go and do something else. Also helpful to say what is not in scope. This meeting is about making this decision, but it's not about those other things. If you know there's likely to be a bit of a tendency to deviate and go talk about a different topic, be clear at the beginning. It's not about that. We're not here to talk about that. That's another meeting. This meeting is about this. You then need to navigate those contributions. Hopefully, everybody has come to the table knowing what you're trying to achieve, has done their thinking in advance. So then in the meeting, you are then just coordinating those contributions so that everybody's voice is heard. Otherwise, why are they there? Making sure that they've had a chance to contribute and that by the end of the meeting, you're getting to the so what. There are so many meetings where people walk away and go, oh, well, that was an interesting conversation. Did we decide anything in the end? What does that mean? We're going to have to go around and do it all again. There's a real art, and there are some businesses we work with where now they literally have this on the calendar invite. What's the so what? When you leave the meeting, the last thing to say, so what's been decided? So what are the actions? What are the next steps? To make sure that it's a very active, productive meeting, because you're creating an agenda that makes you conscious of the outcome of the time you've spent together. Was it worth it? So you end with the so what. So do we need another meeting to decide this, or have we decided? So that everyone's very conscious of that outcome. Then you're following up with kind of reiterating the actions and the next steps, assigning owners and assigning deadlines. The power of a deadline, crazy to give an action without it. So after the meeting, did the meeting achieve the purpose? If not, why not? What got in the way? Was it lack of prep? Were the right people not in the room? Were some people in the room that shouldn't have been, or some people should have been in the meeting but weren't? What is it that got in the way of getting to the outcome and then doing something about it? So does it mean then the structure needs to change? It's fascinating how many businesses have put in place a meeting 3 years ago to address an issue. The meeting still happens, but actually the issue is completely different. But we haven't evolved. We've kept going because it's a recurring invite in our diary. So ensure the actions are followed up on, and then really assessing, was it worth the cost? Was this the right way to do it? Was the return on investment from this meeting, is it worth it? Because there absolutely is at least 15% worth of productivity by just creating a better focus. The bus driver needs to know they're driving the bus. The passengers need to know why they're on the bus. Everyone needs to know what the destination is and when they get there. That's just about meeting etiquette. You can put it on the wall, you can put it on the calendar invite, but the more a team can get behind the thought of this time has to make a difference, the more chance you have of being able to just start accelerating. You can start accelerating, getting through those actions far more quickly. So strategy 2, it's all about making meetings matter. That's a discipline and an etiquette around meetings and the purpose, agenda, and contributions to a meeting, being mindful of behavioural styles and how people can show up and be at their best. So that's strategy 2. Strategy 3, remove focus obstacles. So this is your day, right? So your team, so if I take my team as an example, I might have Kirsty, Kat, Donna and Billy, all they're sitting at their desk and they're trying to scale this wall. Yeah, that's their task for that day, is trying to scale that wall. But every time they get 2 steps, I go, oh, actually, can I just ask your opinion on this? Oh, actually, sorry, do you mind just going and doing something else? Oh, sorry, can you come to that meeting about X, Y, Z? And so they go, oh, okay, and they come back down. And then they come along and do this meeting, make a cup of coffee, have a chat about something, and then they go back to the wall and they start climbing again. And then somebody else says, oh, actually, can I just ask your opinion on something? Do you mind just rereading this presentation? Oh, okay, so they come back down the wall. It's exhausting. It's like, who watches Gladiators? It's like the Travelator. You know, lots of people have Gladiators on a Saturday night, start running up the Travelator and then come back down again. That is such a killer of productivity. It drains energy because everybody is at the mercy of everybody else's tasks. So removing focus obstacles is a key essential action for any business owner or leader of a team. We are all at the mercy, sadly, of our inbox notifications. Ding, ding, ding. You see people in meetings. Ding. They're in the meeting. Oh, no. They're in the meeting. Oh, no, they're not. They're in, they're out, they're in, they're out. Such a crazy way to try and get anything done. So being at the mercy of our inbox notifications, other people putting time in our diary. You know, you've got left that 15 minutes spare to go and get a cup of coffee and then someone puts a meeting in it. We're at the mercy of phone calls, emails, colleague disruptions. Now, collaboration is key. It's not about trying to just keep people separate, but it is about organising it. Because we all have a choice as to how we're going to spend our 8 hours in a day. Are those 8 hours just going to be at the mercy of everybody else's needs? Or are we controlling our own diary, the way we spend our own hours in every day? There's been a lot of research done on this piece, but the most recent piece that I've read says that each interruption triggers a 23-minute brain energy dip, requiring a refocus on a task. So where those soldiers, whatever we call them, were climbing up the wall, up the rope, every time they come back down again and have to do something else, is taking 23 minutes to get back to where they were before they left. So if we think we might be writing a presentation and then the phone goes, okay, we answer the phone call, we come back, it actually takes 23 minutes for your brain to get back to where you were before the phone call. And that's true with every notification, every interruption, every colleague chat, everything. And it's impossible, really, I think, to overestimate how much impact that has on our ability to get things done. Because if we are constantly reactive, we're in a reactive mindset, which means we can't make progress on our tasks because everyone's constantly interrupting each other. So it's not 23 minutes times 1, 23 minutes times 2, because everyone's interrupting each other.
Yep. So the other small thing was to say, I've just done a kind of workplace mediation course, and they use that scenario as one of the conflicts between 2 people at work. Was that the boss was basically, he sort of, I have my AirPods in, that means that I'm trying to concentrate, and the role play was that his colleague kept interrupting. And actually, taking us beyond the role play, you realise actually that does cause friction between staff. If one person's trying to work, the other person is interfering, asking questions, and just not time managing that space, actually, it's not productive, but it does cause friction.
Absolutely does. And it's just about people have different needs. Some people have a need for much more interaction and far more collaboration than others. So neither is right nor wrong. It's a need. But if we leave it unmanaged, it means that the people that have higher interaction needs feel constantly kind of frustrated because they're not getting the level of interaction that they need. And the people that have lower need for integration and need more kind of focus time are feeling constantly interrupted, making them very unproductive. So leaving it unmanaged means that you can have dampened productivity across the board, like nobody wins. So the third point here around scheduling collaboration time to support problem solving and brainstorming, we have to be able to, it's called, lots of kind of productivity gurus call it chunking, the chunking method. How do you chunk time individually and across a team to say, right, at this time we do this. So as an example, for my team, Wednesday mornings between 9 and 11 is thinking time. We do not go and say, oh, can you just check this? Or can I just ask you a question? No, 9 to 11 on a Wednesday, downtime. It's this thinking time to get stuff done where you can just focus. You can turn off all notifications, turn off your inbox if you need to, just turn off your phone, get the work done. And everybody to respect that. Well, we're not in a business where anything particularly dramatic is going to happen if someone's unavailable for 2 hours. So we can allow that space. So being able to say as a business, this is how we can try and manage this. We all have different needs, and therefore we're allowing this thinking time at this time, and then we're allowing collaboration time at that time. Yeah, and there may be that from the team, they may say, well, actually, I find that we have less client calls on a Friday afternoon, so that's going to be my thinking time. Okay, if that works for the business, all right, then Friday afternoons, Wednesday mornings, whatever it might be. When does it make sense to say, quiet time, this is just thinking time, and then put it in the diary, so that we can try and create that discipline, and then it can really help. Creating focus time to protect from interruptions is absolutely key. So it may be things like really good, interesting example for us, because we see this a lot. It's like it does create hostility. So it's how do we create something that works for you culturally, that you feel works for your team members, and whether people are working remotely or whether they're working in an open plan office, or whether they're working in offices or whatever. So it just depends on kind of what their workspace looks like. But we have some clients that use a traffic light system. They have traffic light systems on their desk. Okay, so if it's green, yep, come and speak to me. I'm just kind of getting things done, but I'm not in the middle of focusing. Orange is, yeah, I am working on something, but I'm interruptible. I'm not like on a deadline. And red is, no, I've got my head down. And that is exactly to Forbes's example, is like putting your headphones in. It's not right now. And that, for some people that might feel a bit awkward, but it's about trying to give each other signals, and that's saying, this is what my need is right now. And therefore, if you can accommodate it, it's going to really help. It's going to help me be present when I am speaking to you, but focus when I need to focus, rather than a bit half in, half out. We also have headphones. So often people will use headphones. It can be very difficult in open plan environments, and where we have now got to a point where lots more businesses are hot desking, using shared spaces, that being able to sometimes then focus in what can be a very busy, kind of quite chaotic environment sometimes, is how do you then focus and get some really good work done? So the more that you can consider tools, equipment that might help people be able to focus, the better. So as an example, I've got one of my team members gets distracted really easily, and therefore we've bought them Loop earbuds. Have you heard of Loop earbuds? They're not noise silencing, but they just kind of protect you from the noise. So you can still hear things are going on, but it allows you to be able to kind of block it out. They're brilliant. So we have loop buds in the office if people need to just be able to kind of zone out. Some people just put in headphones if they're working on something. But giving permission to be able to do that, and people, that being a conversation in your team about when people need to do that, what's their preference, is quite liberating. It's saying it's okay to do that where you need to. Now, do we want the whole team sat there on headsets, like not talking to each other? No. But it's about balance, isn't it? It's about kind of creating the conversation, allowing people to find their way for them to be productive and to think about how productive they are. The third one on the bottom right is about prioritization. So there is an active role for business leaders, owners, leaders of teams to play around helping people cut through the noise. So sometimes, particularly if people are maybe newer to a job, or they're actually a new joiner, or there's just so much to do. So how do you help them sit down and go, right, today, what are your top 3 things? Okay, but you're only going to be able to get those 3 things done. So let's just park the rest. You're going to work on these 3 things today. Okay, just being able to verbalize that with somebody in your team really helps them feel like they're in control of what they're doing rather than at the mercy of what they're doing. So that active prioritization, explicitly saying, we are not doing these things, we're going to do these things, that can be really helpful. Because the lack of control is what kind of creates procrastination, a sense of overwhelm and burnout. But we can play an active role in kind of mitigating that. And then the last one is therefore about kind of creating those chunks of time to allow people to do what they need to do. Creating focus time, creating collaboration time and the right environment for that. So it's all about what can you do as you look at your business. How might people be struggling? Is it that they don't have the right equipment? Is it that they don't have the right space? Is there just not enough light? Do they just need more room? What is it? What can you do that will help them? So that's strategy 3. Strategy 4, incentivizing marginal gains. I love marginal gains. It's, the principle was first adopted by David Brailsford. David Brailsford, there's loads and loads of research on this, but David Brailsford, when he looked after the British cycling team, approached the challenge, shall we say, for a team that had not been winning many medals prior to that point, approached the challenge by thinking about the marginal gains. How do you just make small, hence the marginal, small improvements that compound? So how do you make that 1% difference every time? Just improving that process a little bit, just improving that proposal document a bit, just thinking about how to be better with that client on that client phone call. Those incremental marginal gains make a considerable difference over time as they compound. So he would do things like the cyclists would take the same pillow with them. They'd take the pillow that they used to sleep with at home with them when they were abroad or away at events, because it would help them sleep better at night, and therefore they would be better. They would perform better the next day. He did loads about the saddles, loads about their nutrition, obviously, loads about the way they wash their hands. They had a technique of making sure how they wash their hands to ensure that they didn't pick up germs unnecessarily. But it's that you can take that approach, and many businesses do, to looking at their business. How can we make that process a bit better? How can we make the call with those clients better? How do we do that? That takes energy and discipline. It's just like trying to stop smoking or trying to lose weight. It's about the habits every day and kind of continuing to try and make progress, and then being able to look back and kind of just see how much progress you've made. If you said this week, can you imagine? This week, I am going to give £1,000 to the team member who finds the most significant sustainable change that makes them more efficient. If people wanted to, they will find a way. Now, I'm not saying you have to give £1,000 away. What I'm saying is it's funny how if we frame it in the right way, if we create the environment, then we can say, right, whoever finds the best improvement, whoever can find the most ingenious way to improve this process, will give you a Amazon voucher, we'll give you a extra day off, we'll do whatever. How sometimes that can be very motivating and energizing for people to think, actually, there probably is a better way of running this report that I've been running for the last 10 years. There's so many resources now. You can find so many shortcuts, Excel shortcuts, PowerPoint presentation, kind of slide decks that make you faster. There's so many ways. It's just people being able to suddenly think, today is the day I'm going to do that. Otherwise, tomorrow is always an option. So it's trying to help motivate people to go, right, this week, what's the best thing we can find? And I'll give a reward. Again, creating energy and creating focus on finding those improvements. What you can do, so if you were to be looking at a process improvement, is again to visualize it. How do you map out? So I did this recently with a firm of, they did kind of construction rectification after insurance claims. So we got everyone together and said, right, how does this business work? We post-it noted, right, so this comes in, we get an instruction from an insurer, then this happens, then this happens, this happens, this happens. And then literally it became this huge spidergram of who's involved at this point, which systems are involved at this point, what documentation is involved at this point, where are the pain points, where are the bits that are just difficult, where there's too many people involved, where there's a bit of repetition, where there's too much data entry, where we're repeating something, how do you find those pain points and go, do we even need that step? Do we even need to do that bit? Do we still need that piece of paper? Or could that just be done? Could that be done by one person sending it to multiple people? What can we do? So it's breaking down the process on your business, and it might be about how you onboard a client, how you design a product, how you, I don't know, respond to a quote, whatever it might be, map it out and say, where, if we had to find 3 ways to make this more efficient, what would they be? The framing of it is crucial. So there are certain things to look for. Where there are too many approval layers, or where there isn't an approval process. We often find that people say, because we get quite involved in recruitment, people will say, oh, yeah, well, they did say that I could hire for the job. I could hire an extra account manager. Oh, okay. Did they? Well, yeah, they kind of said it. And it creates procrastination. It creates hostility sometimes and disputes, just because people aren't quite sure if something has been approved or not. Or they've had to go through so many people to get approval that it really slows things down. Identifying those issues can be quite empowering to resolve those. Manual data entry. So many times we look at people's reports and we say, why are we even creating that report anymore? That was for a need 4 years ago. We don't need that report anymore. Who even opens the report and reads it? Does it have all the information on it that's going to help make a decision? Duplicated work across teams. So as the baton is almost like a relay race, isn't it? As a baton is handed over between one team and another, it might go from sales to customer service. It might go from customer service or to an account manager, whatever it might be. Are we handing it over in a way that helps them be efficient and pick it up readily? Or are teams having to come back and do some rework to be able to then continue the race? The more we can improve the baton exchange, the better we can be, the faster we can run. Poorly defined roles doesn't help. Outdated tools and systems, goodness, if we don't hear the words artificial intelligence 5 times a day, then we're probably not listening. The ability to be able to think, right, is there a quicker way of doing this? Whether it's in Excel, whether it's on your CRM system, we all know that probably the systems we're using, we're probably only using 10% of the functionality. Could you make a super user? Could you say, right, can you be the super user of a CRM? Learn everything you can about it and then teach us. One person go and do the deep dive, but then come back and tell us, how can we be faster? How can we be better with these reports? So it takes less brain power. And that can really help by creating these super users. And then lack of standardization. Something I've done a lot of within our business is saying, right, we know that we respond to this query every day. So how can we standardize the response to save our brain power, to be more timely, more responsive to the client, by whether it's using templates, whether it's using standardized documentation or standardized process. So when I first started this business, we'd say, send us the details and we'll create your contracts of employment. And we used to get all manner of returns, a bit of this, a bit of that, long email trains. And then we said, no, every time a client requests a contract, they have to complete this document. So we have all the information we need in one go, so we can create it far quicker. One person can double check it. We know it's right 100% of the time. Standardizing the process has saved us hours and hours and hours. And every business obviously has its examples of that. So strategy 4 is incentivizing marginal gains, incentivizing permission for people to come up with ideas, energy for them to create, to count for them, and a motivation for them to be able to come up with ideas, being open to the change, open to changing things. Because if we're not open to changing things, we're wasting our time and their time. If you can afford some kind of incentive, it's amazing what people will come up with when they start thinking about how they can spend it. You then have to celebrate the successes. So where people have come up with ideas, where you have made changes, celebrate those. I think we've saved this much time by improving that process. It really helps energize and motivate further improvements if you celebrate it. And then the last strategy, creating fire breaks. To Bob's earlier point, we can only be running or climbing that wall for a certain amount of time. We can only do that. Our brains have, they don't have an infinite capacity to keep working at an optimum level. At some point, we need to have decompression and allow people to be able to step away to come back to it with a fresh pair of eyes. We need to create those fire breaks. We need to create the stop before we start again to allow decompression. Otherwise, productivity continues to decline. I'm sure we've all seen charts about over time. If we just keep trying to run at a certain pace, we just are going to get slower. The pressure on our brains when we're going through business changes, technology changes, workplace disputes, we've all got a lot of life going on at home and then a lot going on at work. The ability for us to be able to compute all of that is a real challenge for everybody every day. So what we have to be able to do is consider what the effect of long working hours is on our business. Often we'll see a short-term gain, but then a next day drop. If we're pushing too hard, then we can see the next day a real decline, a real slump before they come back up again. If people are continuing working kind of through the night, they may be making poorer decisions. They have a cognitive decline, so the quality of the work is just not going to be as good as it could be, and real hindered creativity because they don't have enough mental energy to be able to do it. I was speaking just before this call. I was speaking with a client, and we've got to have some difficult conversations with people today. And he said, "Sandra, I just couldn't sleep. I couldn't sleep. So what I do when I can't sleep and I've got too much energy, I get up and I do squat jumps. I do squat jumps and I do press ups." I was like, "At 3 o'clock this morning, you were doing press ups?" He's like, "Yeah, because I just had too much energy because it's just too wired." Like, okay, you're going to fall over at some point. It's coming. So we have to create decompression. Now, your culture, your workspace, the way that you operate your business, how you approach kind of the tasks at hand will have an impact on how you create this kind of opportunity to decompress. But it has to be created, because we all know that sometimes we think, oh, we work through our lunch break, or we work through a bit longer, we come in a bit earlier, the days just are long, and therefore we largely are going to be more effective in the morning, and then slowly it gets worse. So it's how do we create the decompression? There are different things for different businesses. Ideas I've seen that have worked could be team breakfast. You might just have a quick half-an-hour team breakfast. Everyone grabs a pastry and a cup of coffee. You go to a different space. You might go outside. You might go to a different space in your shared co-worker space or whatever, but create a sense of difference. Go and have breakfast there as a way just for to go, oh, okay, deep breath. Right, let's focus. Well, then when they come back to their work, think, okay, I'm topped up. I've had interaction. I've had a bit of downtime, and now I can really focus on the day ahead. Introduce Fika. I don't know if any of you have heard of Fika. I introduced this in a company I worked with previously, where at 11 o'clock, everybody in the office would stop just for 15 minutes. Everyone would grab a coffee, and often people would bring in the food. It's always on a Tuesday, Tuesdays and Thursdays. But on a Tuesday, one person in the office would bring in cakes. They'd grab something from M&S on the way in, but somebody would provide food. Sometimes it would be home baked, but just a chance to be able to look up from the computer screens and look at each other and say, "Hi, how are you? How was the weekend? What are you doing? What are you working on? You know, and how's life?" It just creates that sense of decompression, which is much needed. It's a Scandinavian principle, and I can send my details of that, but it is beautiful and it definitely works. We can have walking meetings, a favourite of the chambers, but you know, they're net walking, but the opportunity to be able to, rather than have that one-to-one in that office with the door closed, can you walk and talk? Whether it's, you know, using headsets or whether you're walking next to each other, but being able to walk, it's amazing how conducive that can be to a better conversation, a deeper conversation, better creativity. So when can you walk? Even if you say, right, everybody, just one of your meetings or one of your calls this week should be done walking, can make such a difference. Green lunchtimes, when people are having lunch, go and look at something green. Go and wander around the local park, even if you're just walking up and down the high street, but get some air, get a sense and kind of just make your body move. Otherwise, we're just too sedentary. So just to think what would work for your team. You know, every team's different. You've got different space, but creating it and you putting it on the table means it's far more likely to happen if people feel like they have the permission and that it's an expectation. So in conclusion, we've gone through 5 strategies. They all require curiosity, a curiosity about what could be possible. They all require a bit of trial and implementation. What are we going to trial? So whether it's walking meetings, whether it's decompression, whether it's sprints, whether it's a different meeting etiquette, they require trial and then to implement it, and then a monitoring. How do we sustain this? How do we not slip into those bad habits? It's easy to sometimes launch something much harder to be able to then sustain it over a long period of time. So thinking we're not just starting it, but how do you sustain it over time? Each strategy requires change, and remembering that if you do what you've always done, you're just going to get what you've always got. So the opportunities are endless, but require that focus, curiosity, a willingness to try, and then being able to monitor the successes as you go. Those are our 5 strategies. Ready for a sprint, anybody?
Not with my dodgy knees, Sandra, but it was excellent.
I didn't want to bring your dodgy knees into it, Forbes, but no.
I can go for a nice walk in the Green Park. That's always useful.
Absolutely.
And it is remarkable, actually, how even doing that at a lunchtime, getting out, just having 20 minutes outside, you can come back and with or without coffee, with or without tea, can actually freshen you up for the afternoon, rather than thinking, oh, I've got this, I must keep going, must keep going.
Yeah.
Taking those steps outside is huge amount of changes everything.
Yeah.
Robin, you've just taken yourself off mute. I suspect you've got a question.
No, I didn't want to. I thought this would be the Q&A session, so I was just doing it in anticipation. But if I can lead the questions, and hopefully Olivia and UK is it UK? Yeah, can come following. Yeah, I totally agree with everything you've said, and I just think, particularly in professional services, that the amount of productivity gains to be had are enormous. And certainly, I think 20% over a period of 12 to 18 months, 10% pretty quickly, of the other 10% because the habits are being embedded.
Mm.
But that's going to produce huge resistance because the professional services have been, A, because of the demographics generally in a professional service business, and secondly, because obviously professionals don't like change more than most. So that's it. But it's about technology. I think technology has a huge part. I'm a big believer in AI, and I think AI will play a huge part in this. And I think we're at a pivotal moment, because the way that we work will be in 3 years will be totally different than it was 3 years ago. And this is part of it. But so my big piece is, and I agree with the sportsman, I'm a big thing in sports and actually, but sports from it's marginal gains, but it's the data. It was all data driven. I used Brentford as a good example of what can happen. It was all data driven, and therefore it's the tools that people are using. Yes, the tools that are using, which is my question. The tools, what tools are people using to be able to digitally measure that task, the task being done, getting things done, and also for a team manager to understand who is doing the tasks, who's not doing the tasks in an objective way, because that's what changed sport. You're not running fast enough because here's the data. You're missing too many tackles compared to what you were doing 4 weeks ago. Here's the data. So it's what tools are, and I had a chat with somebody, and he was saying that he thinks 95% of teams are still using pen and paper to take meeting notes. And that's to be saying that in 2026 is a crazy statement.
I'll let Sandra answer that, but just on that one particular point, what's quite interesting, because on that particular point, in terms of the data bit, is also though is the value of still looking at things with one's own eyes. And I say that in so much as that in Como, which is an upcoming team in Italy, in the Football League in Serie A, is that they actually took a young lad from over here who was always watching games and providing feedback on what he saw. And basically, it was showing things which the data wasn't showing, because he was actually watching exactly how, for example, Sandra was running around a pitch. And so the data might say she ran so far, but he could see, but she kind of did it in a particular way. And it's this combination of, and so that's why Como they've got promoted into the Syria, they've gone up, but they've actually put an emphasis, they've created a department on actually watching as much as the data. So I personally believe there's a combination. You do need the data, but also our eyes can show us a huge amount. And I think it's that combination.
Yeah, I think
sorry, sorry. I totally agree. I totally agree. And watching, observing, managing, being able to see the future as a businessman is hugely important. But the data helps these observations.
It does. I think that the data really helps, and it helps demonstrate the progress made and being able to celebrate the success of it too, as well as identifying where there are opportunities. But it can also be as easy as somebody looking at how somebody else is running that report, is responding to that client, is managing that quote. And sometimes people go, I just didn't know you could do that. I didn't know that you could tag it in that way, that you can attach it in that way. It's amazing that there are so many little bits just in the day-to-day which add up to significant improvements over time.
So my question was, Sandra, what task management tools are people using, and what percentage do you think of teams are using digital tools to help them manage meetings and manage tasks?
Every business is using a number of tools to help as a CRM system. A lot of businesses are now using AI as transcription rather than taking minutes and summarizing the content. So I think there is an adoption of tools, but they are still being used to a limited extent in terms of the true functionality, and the best practices aren't being shared across the teams wide enough. So you'll still find that one person is using a CRM system really well, and it's helping them track and prioritize and create momentum. And the person next to them, with exactly the same tool, doesn't realize that they can use it to create a date, that they can use it to tag people, that they can use it to prioritize, using exactly the same tool. So it's about sharing best practices, and creating those super users is really helpful to try and help bring everybody up to the same level. So yes, there are the adoption of tools, nowhere near enough in terms of being able to investigate the best tools for a business, but also the adoption of best practices is still limited.
Do you think there's an element of, not to black and white it too much, the technophobes and the people who love tech? And so do you think there is a dynamic there?
There is, but I think there are always going to be, and Robin, to your earlier point, there are always going to be people that are resistant, but that shouldn't get in the way of trying to drive ahead. The more that you can show people how easy it can be, the more that you can kind of sell it rather than tell it, the more success you're likely to have. Being able to say, we changed this process, look at the difference it's making, look how much easier it's making the job, look how much it's improving the business, the more people are likely in their own way to be able to come along the journey and think that stuff can be possible. But people will go at their own pace. But it's for us to be able to try and help sell that as the ideal, rather than to tell it too much and create resistance. I do have to drop off, I'm afraid, because I have another.
I know, I'm conscious. Thank you, Robin. Thank you so much for that question, though. It's extremely relevant here. Thank you for your time, Sandra. Really, really great content. As always, I really, really enjoyed that, and it's a great reminder to myself. Thank you, Robin, Olivia, and obviously Yuki and Krista, who wasn't here a little bit earlier. Good luck later on, Sandra.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's very useful. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Have a productive day.